Dwayne. This is the outline with Kevin Dwayne. Kevin Dwayne. With Kevin Dwayne.
What's going on, you guys? It's the Outline with Kevin Dwayne. I hope your week is going smoothly. I'm trying to get through mine. And that's only because the last weekend was really busy for me. On Saturday, I had 2 photography gigs. And I've yet to do that where I double book myself. But I said, why not? Let me go ahead and get this money. So I'll do both. I had one, which was like a 45th birthday from it was like 10 a.m. to like 3 o'clock. And then I had like a few hours in between that, and I went to another gig that night. So in between, I tried to go home and like take a nap, but that didn't happen. But I did get some food. I did get to kind of relax for a second, but it didn't take place of, actual sleep. But I went to the second gig, and the second gig went well. But the only problem was, I think my equipment was just like, okay, you're doing way too much today, and I'm going to burn out on you. Because towards the last hour of the second gig, my external flash was like just hot. Like it was burning hot, and it was taking forever for the pilot to come back on. And it was driving me crazy because I was like, oh my God, please don't do this. We have 1 hour left. Just let's get these pictures. Please don't do this. I just didn't want, to look like that, which also goes into the fact that I probably should just go ahead and buy another external flash as a backup. But like I said, I usually don't do 2 gigs in a day, so whatever. But it was a long day. So I spent most of Sunday kind of in this exhausted, tired state because I really didn't get enough sleep. I slept that night, and I, woke up around like 9-10, and then I took a nap, but I still felt exhausted. And I think that's just, that good old after 30. I did a lot on Saturday. So I'm looking forward to this upcoming weekend. It's a holiday weekend, so I can get some rest and, get some things done, and also feel like I'm having some time off, because this previous weekend, though was successful for me, took a lot out of me. So that's that. But I hope your weekend was better, and I hope your week is going well. Make sure that you guys are subscribed. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and click that button right now while you're listening to it. You're probably listening to it on SoundCloud. So on the right-hand side, click follow. If you're on iTunes, click that subscribe. Because what happens is when I release these podcasts, you'll get a notification. It will come straight to your phone. It'll probably download automatically. So you just go ahead and play it. And that way you don't have to wait for me to post it on social media or wherever else. And it helps out with ranking. So please go and subscribe, leave your comments, make sure you rate it, and share it with your friends. This is the 7th episode, I believe. This is the 7th episode. And I think for the 10th episode, I am going to do a Q&A. This is a suggestion from one of my friends. I could have done it for, the next one, but I want to give time for people to see that I'm doing that and send pertinent questions. I don't do messy questions. I'm not going to dig too deep into my personal life, so please watch those questions. But if you have some kind of, thing that you want to get my perspective on, you can go ahead and send that to the outlinetopics@gmail.com. Once again, that's the outlinetopics@gmail.com, and I think it'll be a good time. So that'll be the 10th episode. So that'll be in 3 weeks. That will be our Q&A episode. So send some good questions, and I think it'll be a good time. It'll be fun. So the outlinetopics@gmail.com. So this is what's been going on for the last week. I'm going to start off with the shit that's annoying first, just to kind of keep that energy up. And that way we can go up from here, kind of. Colin Kaepernick, that has been the hot topic. I feel like every week for like the last 2 years, there has been some kind of issue that has caused a racial divide. It could be just me. It could be. But it seems like every week we're arguing over something that has to do with black people and white people, or white people and minorities, people of color versus white people. Every week there's always something. I kid you not. And it's always something. I'm kind of numb to it at this point, to the point that I'm not about to argue with people about things, because you're going to have your view and I'm going to have mine. But this is what I'll say. Colin, if you're not familiar with the story, he's a football player. He said that, I pray he's a football player, right? If I'm wrong, I believe he's a football player. I don't follow sports, but I believe he's a football player. I know that much, but whatever. He did not stand for the national anthem. And this has people in an uproar because, you need to stand up for the troops that gave you the right to, live and have freedom of speech and all that stuff. And you need to show respect to them. But he said, I'm not doing it because people of color aren't treated right here. Like, you guys are killing minorities. Like, there's no justice. And until I see a change, I'm not standing during the national anthem. I'm just not. Like, nah, fuck that flag. And people were in an uproar calling him, a nigger, and you're stupid, and you're ignorant, and you're this, and you're that. The bullshit that we expect. And there's nothing different. This has happened before in the past. We've seen this happen. But here's my kind of issue. It's really the willful ignorance. There have been people in like popular outlets and social media who have gone to Google to find pictures of him next to, items of wealth, his expensive cars and his expensive home, and, and him splurging. And they'll post this picture saying, oh yeah, Colin, you're so oppressed. You motherfuckers are stupid, okay? And this is why you're fucking stupid. You went to Google and you sought out a picture of him flaunting, and you use that to prove your point. But you couldn't take your ass to the regular section of Google, not just the images, and just try to figure out what the fuck it was he was talking about. Like, what he said was not vague at all. But you could at least look into the amount of police brutality, the amount of black bodies that have been killed, the amount of people incarcerated, the amount of hatred towards an entire race of people. You could have looked into that shit and educated yourselves. But instead, you choose to be ignorant. You choose to ignore that this shit is actually going on. And then you post this shit even though that's not what he was talking about. Rich people, people with platforms, they should use them to bring awareness. They shouldn't just shut up, because that's who people listen to. You aren't listening to the poor people. You aren't listening to the black people who are being oppressed. We need these people to speak up. We need to bring awareness to it. So how the fuck do you expect him to just shut up and be quiet? So it's okay for him to play football for you or be this entertainment for you, but being outspoken is just out of the, that's just out of the question. Just shut the fuck up. That's what I want you to do. This country does have issues with police brutality. It does have issues with racism. And if you are burning his jersey, you're going against it anyway, because the troops and veterans, the people who fought for him to be here, they also fought for his right to have freedom of speech. And the Constitution does not fucking say we have to love America. We just happen to be American, okay? Because we're born here and we live here. We don't have to fucking love it, though. We don't have to fucking honor a damn flag that actually is built on the backs of fucking slaves any goddamn way. It doesn't even include us. It works against us any fucking way. I just don't like this idea, well, you live here, you need to respect my country. The fact that you care more about tradition more than actual, like, human life is very problematic. So I commend you, Colin. I may actually, learn more about you, may go buy a jersey myself, to make up for the people who burned them because they're idiots. And a lot of this is just that bandwagon shit too. People do not educate themselves, and they bandwagon the shit. They want to do what everybody else is doing because it seems like, yeah, my country, I'm standing up for my country, but you won't stand up for the people who live in your country who are being killed, and that is problematic. And that's all I have to say about that. VMAs. The VMAs this year, or should I say the BMAs, that is spelled BEYMA''S, because Beyonce murdered that fucking show as always. And let me tell you, you Beyonce haters, you're running out of ammo, guys. It's just becoming ridiculous. At this point, I was thinking of putting together a top 10 of all Beyonce's performances because she has so many slays under her belt. It's just ridiculous. But you guys are running out of things to say. She is such a perfectionist, and she gives such quality performances that even saying she's overrated sounds stupid, because who did it better? Like, really, like, besides Michael Jackson. I know that Janet Jackson comes to the conversation a lot because Janet is Janet. Janet is an icon. Janet is it. And she was first to market. And Janet is fucking Janet. But when it comes to vocals, when it comes to precision, when it comes to overall performance, Beyonce got that shit. Sorry, she got that shit. Nobody got her on vocals when it comes to vocals and dancing and vocal control. Not Janet, not Madonna, not Britney. Sorry. Michael is the only one. He is the only one who gives you a full live vocal, actually has a range, actually dances, all that shit. That is Beyonce and Michael, period. So every time she performs, it's like you're running out of shit. Let's see who she copied. Let's find some kind of Janet song to compare this to. Let's find some kind of walk and find a gif of Janet doing the same thing. It's so fucking draining. And that's all you guys have, because she doesn't half-ass anything. And when you see perfection, it's like, no, it's too, even the compliments are just dry as fuck. Well, you know, this is a great performance, and I can see why today's generation sees her as an icon. You know, she's the closest thing to a living legend. It's so fucking draining, because it's like I want to give you this compliment, but it tears me up inside because I doubted you for so long, but you just keep killing these hoes. But I can't give you credit because that's somehow going to make my icon seem less, and that's just not true. We respect Janet. We respect Michael. We respect Madonna. We respect all these people who came before her, but it does not change her greatness now. She came out there and gave you a 15-minute and 46 seconds, because I've watched it 3 or 4 times already this morning, performance, and it just came out of nowhere. I mean, I don't really check for news for award shows, so they could have announced that she was performing, but I never take it seriously until I see it, because sometimes people lie to get ratings. So it was kind of like, oh, Beyonce is performing, but I did not know she was going to do a performance that large and that big. And it wasn't even her Video Vanguard night. It was Rihanna's, and Rihanna did a great job too. I enjoyed Rihanna's performances, especially the dance hall one. That shit was so lit. Oh, it was so lit. That was my favorite one, with the long do-rag, and Rihanna had so much confidence that night. Like, I loved her presence, and she really controlled it. Britney Spears performed, and for Britney Spears, it was a good performance. Britney Spears has had a very tumultuous history with media and stages, and the last time she did a VMAs was 9 years ago, and that was a catastrophe. That was the Gimme More performance, and it was terrible. So in a sense, this performance was a comeback for her, but at the same time, I'm not going to measure a performance of a white person differently from a black person. And Vanity Fair tried that shit, and it irked the hell out of me. They did this whole Britney Spears did good enough, and that's just it was some kind of title like Britney Spears did okay, and that's just good enough for us, blah blah. And so the whole article was about how it was cruel to put her behind Beyonce, Which is true because Beyonce did slay and Britney came right after. I do get that, but where else was she gonna go? She wasn't gonna open the show, and she damn sure wasn't gonna close it because Britney Spears is not a reliable performer to do that. We saw what happened with Gimme More. They weren't gonna do that shit again. But the performance itself was cool. But she still lip sync, you know, and that's all we expect from Britney Spears. Britney Spears is not a live singer. And on top of that, her dancing, though better than the Gimme More, and it's gotten so much better over the years, it's nothing like when she was at her peak at like 17 or, you know, during the Britney stages. Britney Spears danced really well all the way through In the Zone. And then after that, it got a little bit spotty because, you know, she had knee problems and all the breakdowns and shit. Like, she had things happen, so she can't really dance like she used to. So I get it. But Vanity Fair tried to do this whole, well, no one can compete with Beyonce, but she did better than Rihanna because Rihanna, why did she have to have 4 performances? She could have just had one big statement. Why do you have to split it off with these medium-sized statements? I was like, Rihanna still did her thing, though. No matter how you think they are, she still sang live. She still danced. She still had life in her performance. Britney Spears is like that whole mediocrity thing where it's like, she gets to come out and just do whatever. And a lot of like white media outlets make it seem like she's in a different field because she's white. And I hate that. I hate that whole idea that, well, you know, black people are just like, they're not even human. You know, they have extra muscles and stuff, so they can do things that we can't do. So we have to put you on a different metal. So in a way, Britney Spears really won that night in whiteness because Beyonce is out of this world. You know, it's that mentality of how whiteness is measured is so fucking annoying. But Britney Spears did good for Britney Spears. I get it. She's come a long way. But at the same time, she didn't win that night. But hell, who really can compete with Beyonce? Beyonce is kind of an amazing person. The show overall was kind of trash, though, outside of Britney, Rihanna, and Beyonce. Key and Peele were terrible. That whole mic toss thing that was going on between all the different hosts was terrible. I will shout out MTV for being into BBWs this year. They have a really great presence of like full-figured black women now, and I love it. Between the host of the pre-show, the host during the actual show, the program that they have coming out this fall. Like I love how black they've become. Like, this is the blackest VMAs ever, by the way. Like, Ariana Grande was the only person who wasn't black, and she's damn near honorary anyway because she dated Big Sean. So, I mean, Nicki Minaj was a part of that performance, but it was just crazy. The Chainsmokers too. I mean, that was that, but it was just a really, really black show, unapologetically black too, and the performances were decent, but the I guess the progression of the show was kind of choppy because they should just have one host. And then what Key and Peele did was kind of stupid. It was corny. Like that whole, you know, we're not who we say we are. They should have just been Key and Peele and just hosted it as themselves on the actual stage and not behind that, you know, podium or whatever. But it was choppy, but it was still a better show. The ratings were actually really bad. Well, not bad, but they were less than expected. I think it was only 6 million viewers this year. And last year it was 9 million, which was diminishingly less than the year before. So VMAs are kind of dying. They're dying out. But Beyonce, man. Thank you, Beyonce. Thank you so much. Another thing that happened last week, we celebrated the 15th anniversary of Aaliyah's passing. I don't know if it's really celebrating, but it was more in memory. The reason I'm talking about this is because I can't believe it's been 15 years. I really cannot believe it. I remember the day she died, and I remember how I found out, and it's edged in my mind forever. Just like any celebrity, you remember that thing, especially if you love them, and I loved Aaliyah. I remember my mom was picking me up from a friend's house, and we had to go to the supermarket. And as we were driving down, I believe it was Broadway. It was Broadway. As we were driving down, I'm sorry, no, it was El Segundo. As we were driving down El Segundo to this Albertsons in Hawthorne, I'll never forget this. They were playing Try Again. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm singing along. All of a sudden, they start playing Rock the Boat. I'm like, okay, cool. Then they start playing Back and Forth. And I'm like, why are they playing all these Aaliyah songs? Is it her birthday? Like, and my mom was like, that is weird. And my nephew was sitting in the front seat. And we're all just like, that's so weird. And as we parked at this grocery store, that's when the announcer came on and he was like, man, he was talking, it was a male and a female. I'm not sure who the DJs were. And they were like, man, it's a rough day, man. Da 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 da. They was like, man, it's crazy. You know, Aaliyah passed. And I was like, what? And my mom was like, oh my God. Like, we literally just had a meltdown in the car. It was like, what the hell is happening? They're like, man, yeah, she died in a plane crash. And I'm like, I'm freaking out. I'm like, what is happening right now? And I was 15. And I got out of the car and I called the friend that my mom just picked me up from. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, Aaliyah just died. She's like, no way. I'm like, oh my God, what? And I'm like freaking out. And like at this point forward, my mind is just, I didn't know what to do with it. I was like, this isn't real. How is Aaliyah not here? Like, she was just on 106 and Park on Friday. I remember watching, it was so crazy. And I remember I couldn't really sleep that night because I had a poster of her over my bed. And I had to take the poster down. It was so sad. I wanted to keep it up. But like around 2 o'clock in the morning, between watching TV and seeing the constant headlines over and over and over again and seeing like images from the plane crash and stuff like that, I couldn't sleep. And I kept looking up at the poster and it was too much. So I had to take the poster down. I took it down. I folded it up and put it in like my drawer. And it was super sad. So it's been 15 years since that day. And that's all I can like kind of think about. I'm like, wow, like 15 years. She was just so beautiful. Aaliyah had a huge impact on pop culture and styling. People still dress like her. People still have that style, that look. She had her own lane. She had her own swag, and she did her own thing. And it was dope. I mean, Aaliyah is responsible for pointing us to Missy and Timbaland. I mean, I'm sure they would have worked with other people, but because of where she was in her career, she brought notice to them. And you have to think about the impact that they eventually had as Missy and Timbaland, you know? And so she definitely was a part of 90s pop culture. And she was definitely a part of, she definitely had a place. And, she was a part of that trinity of Brandy, Monica, Aaliyah. And I add Usher because he was one of the teen pop people too. They all came out around the same time in the 90s. And they kind of ran shit. But that drives me into my next point. Every year, twice a year, either on her birthday or, on the anniversary of her passing, people love to have these what if conversations. And these conversations are the most draining things ever because we'll never know. We'll never know. Just like with Biggie and Tupac or Michael or Whitney or whoever else. We'll never know what would have happened. But what I don't like is how people are just so sure. This is my favorite one. If Aaliyah was here, Beyonce would not be as big as she is. Beyonce wouldn't be Beyonce because Aaliyah would still be here. That conversation grinds my gears. And I'm going to give you my opinion on why it's kind of bullshit. And here it is. Okay, so Aaliyah was a part of that trinity. Brandy, Monica, and her. They all were popular artists. They all were multi-platinum artists in the 90s. They were. They all had their own styles. But if you look at facts and numbers, Brandy led the pack. Brandy was the biggest of the three. Then followed Monica, then followed Aaliyah. They all sold. They all were multi-platinum. They all had an impact on music. So, calm down if you're, a huge Aaliyah fan and, you're getting sensitive right now. But Aaliyah was the third in line when it came to appeal and what was really crossing over. She was still very much an R&B artist, okay? In 2001... when she released her last album. It debuted at number 2 on Billboard 100, or was it 200 for albums? 200 for albums. And then weeks after that, it diminished. Like the sales dropped tremendously. And that's why the label had her try to push Rock the Boat and More Than a Woman to try to raise it higher. During this time, well, I won't say during this time, a couple months later. So when Aaliyah passed, that's ultimately what pushed the album to sell because people were buying it. As of today, her last album has only sold 2 million copies. And that was, posthumous, So when Aaliyah passed away, Destiny's Child was the biggest girl group in the world at the time. They were going on a world tour. Survivor debuted at number 1, went on to sell 10 million worldwide, sold 4.7 million in the US. Beyonce was the lead of the biggest girl group in the world. There was no way that Aaliyah was going to somehow raise her sales, get a bigger machine, surpass Monica and Brandy, meet Beyonce, and compete with her. Nothing was going to stop Beyonce's train. Nothing. And I need people to understand that because Brandy, Monica, Usher, whatever, they're still here today. They didn't stop her. So how was it that Aaliyah was going to surpass all of them and somehow be a bigger superstar than Beyonce? Furthermore, if you read like biographies of Aaliyah and you read interviews, she loved music, but she wanted to be an actress more than that. She wanted to go into that realm. And that was also why she was pushing the Aaliyah project off. That's why she was filming the video so that she could get to the movies. I think her passion was moving more into the acting front. I think she would have been a wonderful actress. I think she would have slayed that, kind of like Mark Wahlberg did. Like, I think she would have been award winning and she would have done her thing in that field. She still would have done music and it would have fared well, but she would not be competition to Beyonce. It just wouldn't have happened because it would have happened before it even, you know what I mean? Like, it just wouldn't have happened. And I understand that when people die, we like to revise history and we like to fantasize, like, how big they would be. But it wasn't happening. It was not happening because she wasn't in a position to do that. She didn't even have the machine behind her to do it. She was on Blackground, which was a struggling label. You don't believe me? Where are they now? She was the bread and butter for that label. She didn't have a strong enough label to even like really do that. Whereas Beyonce's been on Columbia forever. They had different machines behind them, but that does not take away from Aaliyah's impact. It doesn't take away from her styling. It does not take away to the fact that, yes, she was a very important part to the 90s and much respect, but there was no way in hell she was going to stop Beyonce's train. And that is my viewpoint. If you disagree, cool. But all I ask is that you just look at the facts. That's all. Closing that part out. All right. So I have like 1.5 table topics because there were 2 things that I couldn't decide on, but one is really, really short and one is more of just, a standpoint. So social media. Do we take it seriously or not? Because I keep seeing these posts. People get on, their soapboxes. Like me, I get on my soapbox all the time. Hell, this is a form of a soapbox. I should have called it the soapbox. Whatever. So people get on their soapboxes on Facebook and they say, man, this is just Facebook, man. This is just IG. This is just Twitter. Y'all take it too seriously. This ain't real life. This shit is fake. I can get that. I understand that. And I think it's what you make it. However, I have to also note, though, look at how far we've come with social media. People are running businesses online. People are finding jobs online. People are meeting their partners online. People are cheating on their partners online. We use social media for a lot of important things. That's why it's called networking, social networking. We're networking, we're doing things. So I think that social media also is real life too. It's not just fake. Yeah, there are people who fake. There are people who present different lives online, which I don't think is a bad thing. And here's why. You shouldn't put your struggles online. I think you should curate your life for media. You should curate it. People should know when you're going through tough stuff all the time, unless it's something that you need help on or something like that. But people should know when you're going through relationship issues. You should only see good pictures of a couple. You should only see positive things online. Everyone doesn't need to know all that intricate stuff about you. So you should curate your life a little better online. So I don't think that that's fake. I just think you're curating it. It's not our lives aren't reality shows. We shouldn't make it that way. But I digress. But I think that there are serious aspects to social media too. I don't think it's all like, oh yeah, this just shit ain't real. No, it's real because lives are affected by it every day. I mean, this is why we're talking about Colin. This is why we're talking about the VMAs. This is why we're talking about prominent issues like Black Lives Matter and things that are happening. This is all in social media. We're learning different views. We're learning perspectives. We're getting so much online. Facebook has become, that's why it's called a news feed. It has become the portal for information. I learn more about what's going on Facebook by clicking links to CNN and NBC and, respectable, researched outlets, not that bullshit y'all post from Cream B&B and all that bullshit, but like actual things. I see that in my timeline. That's how I learn about things. So I think it's kind of unfair to say, oh, this ain't real life. No, it is real life, but it's what you make of it. So are we taking it seriously or not? Like, can we decide? No, because we can never decide on anything. We're always split on everything, but that's what makes us individuals. So fuck it. And that was that point. My next one. I want to talk about ego, I guess, and pretty much figuring out how to put the mirror on yourself. And I think commonly there are people, I used to be one of them, when you date people or you befriend people, a lot of times we always feel like we're dealing with other people's shit or we're dealing with other people's shortcomings. But ego makes us feel like we don't have them. Or what we do is we soften our shortcomings, And I thought about this because I was talking to somebody over the weekend and they saw somebody that they were attracted to. And they're like, oh my God, that guy is so cute. Oh, blah, blah. He's like, but you know what? He probably has a bunch of people on him and I can't deal with that. And I won't be able to deal with that. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. I said, that wouldn't be his fault. First of all, so how can you judge him because he's attractive and people might be on him? But also, if you even got to a place of a relationship, you would have to trust that, he would be like, I guess loyal is the word to you and, wouldn't betray you. And to even extend on that, I was like, you're cute. Because the person I was talking to was cute. I was like, you're cute as hell. So you don't have a bunch of people on you. And then he went to this whole thing about like, well, no, like, but here's the thing. I know who I am and I know like how I would handle it. I said, but isn't that unfair? First of all, we're talking about a stranger here. I'm like, we're talking about a stranger that we don't even know like that. Like I had just met the dude that day, so it was whatever. I said, we don't even know this guy, but you're already saying that, oh, because you know who you are, you wouldn't be entertaining, but you're not even giving this guy that we don't know, that you're not even dating, the benefit of the doubt that if you were in a relationship, he would do the same thing. And this kind of made me think about like in dating in general, like people have to deal with our shit too. It's not always, oh, I got to worry about you doing this. I got to worry about you doing this. I got to worry about this annoying me. But what about the things that you do to people that annoy them? And we all have them. And I think a lot of times we ignore that. But it would help to put the mirror on ourselves sometimes and try to figure out what it is that we do that drive people crazy so that we can kind of work on it. Because, it's all about it. You want to evolve and you want to slightly, adjust things because, no one wants to be selfish. No one wants to be an asshole. No one wants to be that. I mean, maybe people do, but for the greater good of mankind, I think you should work on it. And I'll give you an example of something in my life because, that's how I operate. I like to give examples of things that, happen. A few years ago, I had a bunch of, it was drama. It really was drama. And I think that was the last time I was really immersed in some bullshit. And I committed not to be in that again, which, it helped me grow. But I lost some friends over like this huge misunderstanding, multiple friends. And in that, they all kind of, I won't say ganged up on me because that's a victim mentality. I'm not going to play victim, but they did get together and kind of like say some pretty hurtful things to me. And it came around this whole idea like that I was selfish and that, I didn't care about them or, I never engaged them in conversation. It was all about me, 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 me. Now, that hurt because I didn't agree with it. I obviously went into defensive mode because I'm like, but I came to the hospital when you did this. I supported this. I donated to this. I was there for you when this happened. I did that. I thought about all the things that I did. I'm like, that's not completely true. Not completely true. But at the time, I just went into defense mode because the shit just hurt. And I remember I was talking to a friend, and she let me rant. And we talked it through, and that was that. But then I was talking to the same friend, I think like 2 weeks later, and she was like, "Hey, have you checked on, a mutual friend, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Yeah, I need to talk to her." She was like, "Well, call again and make sure, you ask about, everything that's going on, blah, blah." I'm like, "Okay." And she's like, I remember you were upset a couple weeks ago about someone saying, the conversation is always about you. And she's like, I do have to let you know that sometimes you do redirect the conversation to you. She was like, I think you're being sympathetic or even empathetic, but you always bring it back to you too, like often. So just pay attention to that. And I was like, damn, I couldn't fight this because this was a friend that I've had for a long time. I was like, shit, if you're saying this, it has to be true. It has to be. And it hurt again, but the way it was delivered to me was so nice and so compassionate that I received it. And I started working on it. And I really had to start looking back on myself. So I started writing and saying, okay, let me just think back. And I looked back on some friendships and I was like, you know what? I have been selfish in some ways. I have redirected the conversation back to me. I have not really invested enough in what was going on in people's worlds. And it was because it was never checked. I grew up an only child. I mean, I have several siblings, by the way, several siblings. I'm one of the people who have one of those complicated backgrounds, but I grew up an only child. And no one's ever checked me on that. I think maybe I've always gotten my way or I don't know what it is. But until that moment, I never thought about it. Then I look back on friendships and things that I did. I'm like, oh my God. So now I'm apologizing to people. I'm calling people. I'm so sorry. Oh my, I never realized that this was happening. But I think stuff like that is important. I think we have to go through certain things like that to get the mirror put on us. I think that's what relationships do. I think that's what friendships do. I think that's when we have those big fallouts. It reveals things, but we have to be receptive to the shit that we're doing. I think the biggest pain happens when ego doesn't allow us to do that. And we see it in relationships all the time where it's like, people just don't want to see your perspective on them, and it causes a divide. And that was one thing I started working on. So now, if you're a friend of mine, I keep the conversation on you. Now people are probably gonna say, oh, well, you don't share enough of yourself, Kevin, because I'm like, how are you? How are you doing? How's that thing going? The situation you told me about last time, what happened with that? Like I'm tuned in to people in conversation. I make sure I don't bring it back to me. And I think it's helped me in my friendships. It's helped me at work. It's helped me everywhere. And I'm very, very, very cautious that I am being in tuned to other people. But that was one of my issues. That was one of the things that I had to realize that people have to deal with me. They had to deal with, I guess, me victimizing myself and me doing that and bringing it back to me. So I started working on that. But I realized that I'm flawed. It's not me, you know. I share responsibility in whatever happens in my friendships and my relationships. And so ultimately, I think everyone should do that. Try to figure out what it is that you're doing. What is your responsibility in like fallouts and things that aren't working? Because no one is perfect. So while someone gets on your nerves with their cynical ways, you may get on their nerves for, you know, being too nice or something. You know, it's always something that we annoy each other in this life. We all have things that people aren't fond of, you know, and I think it's good to put the mirror on yourself sometimes and not be defensive and just listen. So ask a good friend of yours, like have a real conversation and try not to be sensitive about it or try not to be, you know, offended, but say, okay, can you think of something that you think that I possibly could work on to make this friendship better? Like, is there anything that you've done anything that I've done that has slighted you in the way that I do often that you just kind of let slide because you didn't want to offend me? This is that moment. I think that could be our mental health thing. In fact, let's make that our mental health moment because I think it's good for mental health because it's good for growth. It's good for having peace within because you're working on yourself. So let's make that the mental health moment this week. Talk to someone very, very close to you who will be compassionate and not mean and not, you know, ruthless, but someone just like, listen, we've been friends for a long time and I'm working on evolving and I do want to be a better friend. I want to be a better lover. What is something, a behavior or characteristic that I do that kind of makes you feel a certain kind of way? Like, let me know. And work on not being offended by it because it's someone's perspective of you and it's someone that you're close to, it's someone that loves you and it's someone that cares about you. So they're not trying to hurt you. Listen to them and you'll probably get defensive because, you know, it's hard to hear negative things. It's so hard to hear negative things about us. You know, it's just, it's difficult, but just listen and consider. Maybe journal about it and try to figure out if it's true and listen to their perspective. Don't fight back. Don't try to argue, but no, just listen to their perspective, get more details, get maybe a couple examples and sit with it and see if it's something that you can work on. And yeah, I think that'll be a good exercise this week. So let me know how that goes. Remember to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, Facebook, Stitcher. What else am I on? Google Play Music. It's everywhere. KevinDeWayne.com. Leave your reviews. Also send the questions for the 10th episode at the outline topics@gmail.com. And that is the show this week. Thank you so much for joining. I say it every week, but I love you guys. I love this. And it's my favorite part of the week. So I will talk to you all next week on the outline. Enjoy your holiday weekend. Enjoy talking to your friends about, you know, the things that you do to annoy them. And yeah, that's that. Peace out.